All right. So I thought that I would kind of end the mental health month with a little bit of concept on there's other paths than just Freud. Uh, in the Freudian context, the reason why Freud did the way he did, where you doc sits behind you and you're on the couch, was really not because it was therapeutic. It was because Freud had a massive cocaine habit. We would rub it on his gums and his teeth fell out and he looked hideous. So he didn't want anybody to see him. So that was one of the big issues that one of the reasons they set up that way. The other thing is that the idea that you should go back into your trauma and relive it and associate into it and be part of it and let it traumatize you over and over and over again while you talk about it, I'm not a huge fan of. And I know that that's helped some people, but if you look at the general overview of how long people have been in therapy and the benefit they get out of it, it's not as the records aren't as awesome as we'd like them to be. So there is another way that you can go through this. So like most of the stuff that people are familiar with is more of a Freudian sit, talk about it, and then anything that's bad is repressed, and you have all this repressed energy, and a lot of that repressed energy is sexual energy, and so that's why you're all messed up. Um, the idea that there's one right answer and that there's one viewpoint on psychology is not accurate at all. There were a couple other guys that we should kind of look into, and this is where NLP differs a little bit from the standard psychotherapy. Now, psychotherapy is great. It's helped a lot of people, and it's a phenomenal business model from the standpoint of, it's going to take a long time. There's, you come in every week and you talk about it and that whole deal. And like I said, it has helped some people, so I'm not trying to say we should throw it away. However, there were other people we should look into. Adler, for example, Adler believed that it wasn't so much that you had all these repressed emotions. Adler believed that it was a sense of, like he was the guy who came up with the inferiority complex that people attribute to Freud. It wasn't Freud, it was Adler. But Adler's big thing is that one of the big things that we have, the problems that we have, is our connection to society and our connections to the family. Basically, it's what is our purpose? Why are we here? Like that was his big thing. It was that it's not that people have horrible, latent, repressed sexual energy. It was that they don't understand why they're here. Like he was the guy who was like, the reason people are messed up is because they don't understand their purpose. So that was his big thing. And I think that, now that, missing purpose syndrome or whatever it is, that's the new diagnosis they're giving everybody, is the lack of purpose, lack of reason to be here. Like that was Adler's whole thing, is that was where people were coming in. Pavlov came up with, that was the guy that ring the bell, the dog salivate, like Pavlovian programming, tying things to specific acts. That's outside of Freudian function as well. And so what Adler and William James, for you guys who don't know, William James was one of the top psychiatrists, psychologists from America. Lots of buildings and things were named after him. So William James was one of the big guys here in the United States. All these guys kind of followed that, they took in some of the things that Freud did, because Freud did amazing amounts of things for society. It's just, the idea that we should only do Freud's talk therapy, I think is silly. The work with the unconscious mind as the basic programming, how we do things, how we're programmed, does tie into trauma. And so if you have trauma, it will affect the way that you then perceive the world and you go through the world. And dealing with those traumas and removing them is, of course, important. But the thing that we get into with the way you do it is, the problem we get into is that everybody thinks that the trauma that their body was reacting to, their mind was reacting to, was some big thing that makes a lot of sense. And that's not how the unconscious mind works. So a lot of times as a child, something will happen and like you're about to touch a stove and your parents yell at you, "Don't touch the stove." And it scares you. And you're like, oh, okay. And you look back and you're like, well, of course my dad should have yelled at me and told me not to touch the stove, because I would have burned myself. What he did was right. Yeah, what the dad did was right. However, it did also imprint upon you a piece of fear and the things that, might have become traumatizing. And so one of the big things that comes into is that there are things that our mind has perceived as a trauma that when we look back on it, we would never be like, oh, that's a trauma. And the problem we get into is that if you have 1,000 of those little traumas that you don't perceive as traumas, but your mind did, you're never going to get to the root of the actual issue. And so you'll kind of spin around and around looking for something that's traumatic to you as an adult when it wasn't your adult mind that perceived this issue. It wasn't your conscious thinking adult mind that recognized this as problematic or traumatic. And so that's one of the issues you get into. And so there are ways of talking directly to your unconscious mind and telling it to just, hey, that's whatever that thing was that happened when you were 3, let it go. And your unconscious mind goes, okay, and lets it go. And that radically alters how your whole function moves. And so there are other ways of doing this besides just sitting and talking forever. And going through some of the conscious programming and understanding verbiage function and understanding the things that create traumas in the body that then can lead to physical manifestations and illnesses later on. I would tell you that one of the most important things you can do for your health is find a way to deal with your emotional issues and your unconscious programming and all those little things that are in your head that you've got to kind of sort through and deal with and move out. Some of which, by the way, didn't happen in your lifetime. And that's a completely different conversation. But real quick, what ends up happening is that someone up the chain had something traumatic happen to them, and they associate it with something. It changes their epigenetics. And this is all, you can look all this up. It changes their epigenetics, and then it imprints upon them. As you then pass that line down, the next generation will also be afraid of or have a hesitancy towards that issue as well. And so that's why getting rid of some of the things that have been ingrained in you, like the Bible talks about the sins of the father are carried down 7 generations, that type of idea is what we're talking about. So if the only thing you've been exposed to as far as, you know, mental health, as far as mental progression, self-development, personal development, whatever you want to call it, is the Freudian, you sit down and you talk, and not somebody going through and finding unconscious things that are programming you into walking down a road that you never really thought through, I highly recommend that you find somebody who's good at it, something like NLP or Adler's teachings and something like that, and go through and find your purpose and go through and, you know, start to not get rid of, but admonish or kind of say, this thing is okay, you can let it go, to the unconscious mind. There are lots of ways that you can talk to the unconscious mind and get it to let go of things. So the things that create hangups for us oftentimes happen when we're early in childhood, because what happens is called a significant emotional event, or a C. When you have a significant emotional event that your mind doesn't have the ability to organize, deal with, and get rid of, it creates a loop. It creates like a little bundle of like, what do we do here? Like freak out. And that's what you kind of have to go back and kind of tell your unconscious mind, like, look, just let go of this. Like you can get rid of that, and we're going to move forward. That's one of those great things that you do with timeline therapy. You can do that with a couple of different varieties of different tools. But getting rid of those is really, really amazingly impactful. And you can see the difference in a day. I saw it with Lou. I saw it with my wife. She went, and Nathan and Christy helped reset her. And a lot of the work trauma that she dealt with was gone. Like went in with work trauma, came home without it. It was amazing. I was having some stuff when we did our breakthrough, and it literally changed overnight. It was unbelievable. Like it wasn't one of those things where like, I don't know. I think it was like definite, significant change overnight type of thing. Because as soon as your unconscious mind goes, oh, we're not going to run this program anymore. Cool. We're going to run this one. Got it. It's gone. And it just completely changes. And it is kind of that fast. So I would tell you that if you're struggling and you've been doing some stuff and you're like, hey, I'm seeing a therapist and I'm getting phenomenal results, stay with your therapist and do that thing. If you're seeing a therapist or you're not seeing anybody and you're like, I just don't get it. I don't understand why, you know, I'm not getting better, or I have these, you know, weird thoughts and these, you know, telling myself I'm not good enough, and, you know, I have no purpose, or I have no reason to be here, or, you know, any of those type of things. I would find somebody who's been taught properly how to run timeline therapy and NLP work and anchoring and stuff like that, and kind of get in with them so they can at least explain it to you, explain what's going on in your head, explain kind of how it all lays out, explain how you have the power to actually alter and change it. Because once you understand how the programming is set up, once you understand how the mind kind of works, you can start to see it. And all of a sudden, like the veil's pulled back, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, now I see it. I kind of understand what you're talking about. And you can literally go back through and start working on your own mind and start peeling these things apart and start recognizing them for what they are. One of the, like, there's so many cool things in this. Like once you start getting into it, like one of the big things is that, I talk about this a little bit. I talk about this a lot with patients. Anger is not a primary emotion. You don't get angry. You get sad. You get lonely. You get hurt. You get depressed. You get something negative, and then anger is the body's response to it. It's the defense mechanism to it, to push away from whatever that negative feeling is, because it's hurting you. You're like, oh, I don't like that. And so you get angry and you start pushing back. That's where a lot of the anger comes from, because that's, your body doesn't, it's kind of one of those things that you get to choose what you take offense to type of idea. But at the end of the day, whenever something makes you super angry, you need to look at why that thing makes you angry. What is it about it that's making you angry? And that's one of the big things that happens with NLP, at least the way that we were taught. There's a lot of different NLP out. There's a lot of different therapists and a lot of different, people with supplements and all sorts of things. And so I would highly recommend that you find people who are really, really good. The people that I know that have been trained in this that are really good, I met through Recalibrate 360. I met through Christy and Nathan. And Christy and Nathan are unbelievable at it. It's so much fun to watch them just pick apart and dissolve something that's like really big. And then like all of a sudden it's like, there's your issue. And you're like, oh my God, it's so much fun. They've done it to me several times. But once you kind of understand how it works and how the unconscious mind works and how the little hookups and little hangups and little, what we call parts, little things that aren't put back together properly are there, you can then go through and take them apart and you can put them back together. And it's really, really cool. And it's really, really quick. And you can see it yourself. There's been so many times where like you'll walk somebody around it and they'll go, oh my gosh, I never thought look at it that way. And you're like, yeah, okay. Now that you see it this way, do you understand it better? They're like, oh my gosh, like it makes so much sense why X, Y, Z, or why I feel this way, or, oh, okay, cool. I'll start changing the way we do things. Because once you understand how programming happens, and this is a lot of Pavlov, this is behavioral science, things like that. Once you kind of understand how this stuff works, it makes it a lot easier to just go back through and change the way the programming is set up. And that's all unconscious mind work. So think of unconscious mind like, if any of you are old enough, this is going to really show age. No one under 30 is going to remember this. There's DOS, and then there's the operating system on top of DOS. And so DOS, whatever happens in DOS, it's going to be your unconscious mind, will affect the operating system. Very loose analogy, but same idea. And so whatever's going on in the unconscious mind will then change the way your conscious mind thinks about things. Like, wow, this is bad. And easy example of this is whenever you go out and you see people who are on, being interviewed on the street and they tell them, hey, Obama said this thing. What do you think about it? And Trump really said it. And they're like, oh, if Obama said, I'm 100% down for it. That type of thing, because they've decided that the political allegiance that they're with, that they're always right. And so they don't critically think about the things that are said. Happens both sides, Republican, Democrat. But that's kind of the idea, is you've been programmed to just automatically like or assume X, when, it's from this group or this people, that type of idea. So that's kind of where some of this goes from. A lot of people have these programming on them that they're unaware of. And once you kind of point it out to them and they kind of understand it, you can start changing how your body functions, how your mind functions, and the actions that come from it. So if you're not where you want to be mentally, and nobody's going to get there on their own, you have to have somebody kind of show you where your blind spots are, whether you're doing standard psychotherapy, you're sitting down, you're talking to somebody, or you're doing something like NLP. You can't see your own blind spots. That's why we call them blind spots. And it's so funny because some of these blind spots are like, you're not looking at this side of the world. Like, it's giant. And then they're like, okay. And then all of a sudden you see it, you go, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. Like, I didn't know that all these things were there. Yeah. Now you can start unwinding them and changing them. So that's kind of the big difference. If you guys haven't started doing something to work on your mind and your personality and how you deal with the world, it's really important. That's why when we talk about the pillars of wellness, psychology is a big piece of it. Now, we always go through and fix the biochemical because, like we talked about before, metabolic health is psychological health. So once you get those two things, once you get the chemical piece knocked out and you're all good there, then you can work on the mental piece. And it is some of the most amazing things, the most transformative things that you're ever going to see. And this brings in some of the plant medicine, the ayahuasca, the psilocybin, and stuff like that. But you've got to get prepped for it. You kind of have to understand what's going on, the layout of it. So as we talk more about plant medicine in the next couple of weeks and months, you'll understand that the base function is get your metabolic function, your biochemical function set first, then start kind of understanding the frames of how the world works and how your mind works, how the programming happens. Then you can go through and you can start altering it. And that's when the psychedelics really kind of help kind of get you where you want to go. And that's where we start breaking down major issues that are really problematic. This is where we start ending addictions and things like that. So as we go through, we start talking about more and more plant medicine, stuff like that. We'll get more into this, but this is the way that we usually walk people through it. It's a really fantastic system. And if you've done plant medicine, you haven't gotten where you want to go yet, we're going to go through that as we go along, but that's a big piece of this. So if you guys are into that, we'll knock it out soon. All right. If you guys have any questions, hit us up, questions@chalmerswellness.com. If you want somebody to help walk you through this, get a hold of us and we'll hook you up with one of the guys we work with that we've already worked with and that are great. My recommendation is Christy, Nathan, or Lou, but we have a dozen other people you can work with. So give us a call and we get you all set up and get your mind back where it's supposed to be. You guys have a fabulous day. Thanks for your time.